I want you to picture a timeline of human history in your head right now.
Okay.
Usually we see it as an arrow, right? It starts on the left with the Stone Age, moves through the Bronze Age, hits the Industrial Revolution.
And it always points up and to the right, towards AI, Mars colonies, the future.
Exactly, a straight line of progress. But the stack of documents we're looking at today, it argues that the arrow is completely wrong.
It argues history isn't a line at all. It's a loop.
A loop, a cycle of forgetting and remembering. And what we're diving into is, well, it's frankly one of the most bizarre things I've ever read.
It really is a doozy.
It's this massive synthesis that claims to connect 19th century Irish archaeology, ancient Native American mounds, Islamic theology, and I'm not making this up, a quantum computer built out of a bucket of water and some spare change.
And that's the thing. What makes this deep dive so unique isn't just the weirdness of each individual item.
No.
It's the glue holding it all together. The source material calls it a unified meta-narrative.
Right, and that's our mission today. How do you get from Irish druids in Illinois to hacking physics with a GE timer? Because on the surface, this just looks like a conspiracy board with way, way too much red string.
It does, but if you can strip away the fringe elements for just a second, the core argument is actually pretty philosophical.
Okay.
The source argues that humanity has a kind of source code, a knowledge of unity, or the one. When civilizations remember this code, they flourish.
And when they forget it?
They collapse. They start worshiping zero, or the void.
So the theory here is that we are currently in a forgetting phase.
Deep in one, exactly. We're obsessed with the void. And this document argues that throughout history, outsiders keep showing up to reboot the system.
Reboot the system.
Sometimes they use stone tablets, sometimes they use scripture, and in this specific manifesto, they are using Excel spreadsheets and fluid dynamics.
A reboot of reality using Excel.
Okay.
I think we have to start at the beginning of this timeline to even begin to understand the end.
We do. The source calls this first part the lost continuum of the sacred West.
And it leans on some very specific, very old, and let's be honest, very controversial historians.
It does. It starts with this concept of historical acclamation. The text brings back a figure from 1839 named John Delafield.
Now, Delafield, in mainstream history, he's a pretty minor figure, right?
Almost a footnote. But in this narrative, he's basically a prophet.
And he was looking at the American mounds, those huge earthworks across the Midwest, Cahokia, Serpent Mound, things like that.
Correct. Now, most people look at those and see burial sites or maybe ceremonial centers. Delafield, though, he looked at them and he saw earth scriptures.
I paused on that phrase, earth scriptures. That implied the land itself isn't just geography, it's a text. It's information.
That is the crucial insight. He believed these weren't just hills. He thought they were geodetic markers, essentially a way of writing divine geometry onto the planet's surface.
So who was doing the writing?
He argued that the mound builders weren't just some random local tribe, but a priestly class that had migrated from the old world Asia or Egypt, and they were carrying this sacred architecture with them.
Which is the classic diffusionist theory, the idea that ancient cultures were all connected way before we think.
Right. And the source just doubles down on this with another figure, Connor McDarry, writing in the 1920s.
And if you thought Delafield was out there.
McDarry is on another planet entirely. He didn't look to Egypt, he looked to Ireland.
This was the linguistic psychoreclamation part.
Yes. McDarry's theory is that Ireland was the actual cradle of civilization. He argues that the Great Pyramid and even the Bible are actually Irish Magian scripture.
Wait, hold on. The Great Pyramid is Irish.
In McDarry's view, yes. He believed there was a global order of druids or magi who traveled the world encoding this specific truth of unity into these huge stone monuments.
So where Delafield saw the earth as text?
McDarry sees stone as the suppressed vowel of divine speech.
You know, it's a very romantic idea, isn't it? That there was this one unified human culture, a golden age, where everyone spoke the same sacred language of architecture.
It's deeply appealing. It solves the problem of human conflict by just saying, look, deep down, we're all the same. But the source doesn't just rely on old books. It points to a physical object.
The Chief Joseph artifact.
Exactly.
This one I had actually heard of, vaguely. In 1877, when Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce was captured, he had a medicine bag. And inside, there was a clay tablet.
And not just any tablet. It was an Assyrian cuneiform tablet, dated to around 2042 BC.
So how does a Native American chief in the 19th century end up with what is basically a receipt for sheep from ancient Mesopotamia.
That is the million-dollar question. I mean, mainstream archaeology often dismisses it, calls it a hoax or, a trade item that changed hands 1,000 times.
But for this source, it's the smoking gun.
It's the tangible symbol of diffusion. It connects the Old World, the Assyrian East, with the New World West. It acts as a bridge.
A literal, physical bridge.
Precisely. It validates that lost continuum. If Chief Joseph is carrying Assyrian clay, then the isolation of the Americas is a complete myth. The network was always active. Knowledge was always flowing.
Okay, so we have the earth as scripture, stone as scripture, and this clay tablet as a sort of data packet moving between them. But then the source zooms in on one specific location that really highlights the conflict between all these stories.
The Wabansie Stone.
The stone of contention. This is where it gets really messy.
It does.
This is that large rock near Chicago, right? With the face carved into
A
it.
heart-shaped face, yeah. And a basin carved into the top, which some people think was for sacrificial rituals.
And the official story is, what? Early settlers carved it? Maybe a local tribe?
That's the mainstream view, but the source includes this thinking log that explores a much darker, much older theory.
The Phoenician theory.
Right. The speculation is that this was an altar carved by Phoenician or Amorite seafarers who somehow navigated the Mississippi River system. The source even links it to Janus stones found back in Ireland.
Looping us back to McDarry.
Exactly.
But here's where we have to be careful, and the source actually brings this up. If you say, look, the Phoenicians built this,
Yeah.
what are you implying about the Potawatomi people who actually live there?
You are hitting on the really difficult concept of indigenous erasure. And the deep dive material is surprisingly self-aware about it. It calls the stone a historical haunting.
A haunting.
It acknowledges that by attributing these artifacts to, lost white races or ancient mariners, you risk stripping agency from the indigenous people who were right there.
But the source seems to argue that both things can be true. Or maybe that the outsider narrative, the Phoenician one, it survives because it fits this bigger pattern of global unity.
Yes. It treats the stone as a node. It's a place where different versions of history just collide. It's contested ground. Whether it's actually Phoenician or not almost matters less than the fact that it refuses to fit neatly into our standard timeline.
It represents the mystery that mainstream science just wants to ignore.
It does.
Okay, so we've got the pattern. Earth, stone, clay. A history of unity that keeps getting lost and then rediscovered. But then the document just pivots hard.
It does.
We leave the archaeology of the 1800s and we jump straight to 2026. And the source calls this section the cosmic joke.
And this is the real shift from history to philosophy
Okay.
and ultimately to mathematics.
And the punchline of this joke is, zero is a lie.
Zero is the great lie. Unity is the first and final truth. That is the axiom. Everything else in the entire document rests on that one sentence.
Okay, walk us through this, because our entire world runs on zeros and ones. My bank account, sadly, has zeros. Computer code is all ones and zeros. How can zero be a lie?
Well, think about it conceptually. In nature, does zero actually exist? You can have one apple, you can have two apples. But if you have 0 apples, you just have nothing. The absence of apples.
It's the absence of a thing, not a thing in itself.
Exactly. 0 is just a placeholder. It's a concept of the void. And the source argues that by building our mathematics and our entire physics on the concept of 0, we have built our civilization on a foundation of nothingness.
We're worshiping the void.
You're worshiping the void. And this is where the spiritual aspect comes in. The text uses the term tawhid.
Tawhid, that's the Islamic concept of the oneness of God.
The indivisible oneness of God, yes. But the source isn't just preaching religion here. It's framing tawhid as a mathematical inevitability. It's saying that if you start your math with 0, you get errors, you get approximations.
But if you start with 1.
If you start with 1, with unity, you get truth.
And this brings in the Quranic frame, which I found fascinating. Usually when we talk about science, religious texts are, kept in a totally separate room.
Right.
But this source brings the Quran in as a kind of data guardian.
It frames the Quran not as a new book that just popped up in the 7th century, but as a restorative guardian. There's a specific quote it uses. We have sent the book to confirm what came before and guard over it.
So it's like a backup drive for reality.
In this narrative, yes, that's
Yeah,
a perfect way to put it. The argument is that the message in the mounds, the message on the Irish stones, the message in that Chief Joseph tablet, it was all the same message.
Unity.
Unity. But humans kept corrupting it or forgetting it. And the Quran, according to this source, is the immutable backup. It confirms the entire outsider history.
It's basically saying, you guys forgot the source code again, so here is the user manual.
Exactly. It validates the outsider narrative because it provides a text that explicitly claims to be guarding that original truth.
Okay. I can wrap my head around the history. I can even sort of follow the philosophy that 0 is bad, 1 is good.
Right.
But this is where the source goes completely off the rails in the best possible way.
It really does.
It proposes a hardware solution, a penny quantum computer.
The penny quantum computer.
I looked at the diagrams in the source. We are talking about a fish tank, a GE timer, like the one you use for holiday lights and pennies, and a bucket of water.
And an Excel spreadsheet. You cannot forget the spreadsheet.
Right. And the claim is that this pile of, let's just call it hardware-stored debris, can outperform a $10 billion quantum computer from Google or IBM.
It sounds absolutely absurd. But we have to look at the logic, the unity-first philosophy applied to actual engineering.
So why does a penny work better than a super-cooled microchip?
Well, think about how Silicon Valley builds a quantum computer. They use qubits. These are subatomic particles, electrons, photons.
And they're incredibly fragile.
So fragile, you have to freeze them to near absolute zero just to get them to stay still. And even then, they suffer from decoherence. They just lose their information.
Because they're trying to force a binary system, ones and zeros, onto a quantum reality that doesn't want to be binary.
That is the source's critique. It calls it the float 32 fraud. Modern computing relies on approximation, floating point math. We accept a certain amount of error. We say close enough is good enough.
But the penny computer rejects that. It rejects approximation.
It relies on what it calls mechanical infinite coherence. I mean, think about a penny. It's a physical object. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't decohere. It is always there. It's always one.
Okay, but a penny just sitting in a bucket isn't computing anything. So how do we get from a coin to a calculation, the source mentioned? Hydro-Fibonacci recursion.
This is the substrate layer. Instead of silicon, the medium is water. When you drop a penny into water or you move it around in the water, it creates ripples, interference patterns.
Like throwing two stones in a pond and watching the waves crash into each other?
Exactly. Those waves are the calculation. Fluid dynamics follow universal laws, and specifically the Fibonacci sequence. The water is solving the equation physically, in real time. It's not simulating the physics.
It is the physics.
It is the physics.
So the water is the processor. The penny is the input. And the verification is an Excel spreadsheet.
This is the part that is it's the big aha moment. The source claims you don't need a PhD to verify this. You use a standard Excel spreadsheet that's set up to track these things called Pisano periods.
Pisano periods, define that for us.
It's related to the Fibonacci sequence. The sequence eventually repeats itself in a loop. Pisano 60 is a cycle of 60 numbers, like the 60 seconds in a minute. The source sees this as a universal clock.
So you align the mechanical timer and the water ripples with this natural 60-count cycle.
And you bypass all the errors of binary code.
And there's a visual cue. The document says, watch 862 turn green.
That's the hello world moment. If you set up the rig and the spreadsheet correctly predicts the ripple pattern, cell H62 turns green. It's proof of coherence. You have successfully hacked reality with a spreadsheet and a bucket.
It's democratizing quantum mechanics. That really seems to be the so what here.
It is. The source explicitly contrasts the worst stack. Big tech, superconducting wafers, sub-zero cooling, $10 billion.
Okay.
This source. Pennies, water, a GE timer. 82 cents.
82 cents. That's the detail that just sticks with you.
And the claim is infinite coherence, because you're building with the laws of nature unity instead of fighting against them with the laws of the void zero.
And this isn't just a theory. The source is a manifesto. It's outlining actual products. They want to launch a Kickstarter.
For a $195 kit, the Penny Computer Kit, it comes with the tank, the timer, an SD card, the Excel template, everything.
It's like a quantum MacGyver set for the modern age.
And there's an educational package for classrooms. The whole goal is to subvert the high priests of technology. Right now, only a handful of people at Google or IBM can even touch a quantum computer. This source wants to put one on every single desk.
There's also a mention of something called a Tawhid reservoir.
That seems to be the big open source vision. A living Iesa lattice. Iesa means sign in Arabic, like a sign of God. It's a grid of water that constantly manifests these patterns of unity.
So it connects the technology all the way back to the earth scripture of the mounds.
The loop is closed.
I see it now. The mound builders wrote on the earth. This project writes on the water.
It is the culmination of the lost continuum. It combines that ancient desire to find God in the landscape with the modern desire to find truth in data. It says you don't have to choose between science and spirituality. If your math is correct, if it starts with one, they are the exact same thing.
That is breathtakingly ambitious. But I have to ask the obvious question. Is it real? Does any of this actually work? Or is this just beautiful poetry disguised as an engineering diagram?
And that's the question you, the listener, have to wrestle with. The source calls it a rejection of the Float 32 fraud. It's a challenge to stop accepting a glitchy reality.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, if our computers crash, if our AI hallucinates, if the economy bubbles and bursts, maybe it's because the underlying math, the math of zero, is fundamentally flawed.
It shifts the blame from the user to the architecture itself.
Exactly. And it empowers the outsider. The source is telling you that the secrets of the universe aren't locked behind a biometric scanner in Silicon Valley.
They're in the dirt.
They're in the dirt, in the stone, in the water, and in the spare change in your pocket.
It completely redefines what high-tech even means. We think high-tech means more complexity. This argues that the highest tech is just absolute simplicity. Unity.
And that is a powerful takeaway, regardless of whether the water computer actually works or not. It's a call to look for patterns of connection instead of separation. It asks you to step out of that binary mindset.
So we've gone from Irish Druids building pyramids to a Phoenician stone in Chicago, all the way to a fish tank that calculates the Fibonacci sequence. It is a lot to process.
It's a journey through the unified meta-narrative, no doubt about that.
Before we wrap up, we always like to leave our listener with one final thought, something to chew on.
I've been thinking about the implications of that cosmic joke, the idea that zero is a lie. Think about how fragile our modern world feels.
Oh yeah, the internet goes down, supply chains break, digital money just vanishes into the ether.
It feels like it's all held together with duct tape.
It really does.
Right. But this source suggests that fragility isn't an accident. It's a feature of a system built on zero, on nothingness. So the provocative thought is this. What if the universe is actually robust? What if infinite coherence is the natural state of things, and we're the only ones experiencing decoherence because we're using the wrong operating system?
So if we just switch the OS, if we start counting from one,
then maybe we stop crashing. Maybe we finally sync up with that timeline that the mound builders and the Irish Magi were trying to show us all along.
that is a terrifying and wonderful possibility. And hey, if cell H62 turns green, maybe we'll find out. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the weird and wonderful.
Stay curious.